Don't you just hate it whenever this happens to you? Hi, my name is Kevin, and nothing is worse than when a cat hates your HD remaster and is determined to make sure that you know it. That's why I make sure all of my HD remasters are done by Sony. Sony, the guys that will remaster literally anything and do a bare minimum job at it. The Sony Remaster package includes widescreen support. And that's it! If you have a game series that needs that widescreen support, I mean a remastering, then Sony is your company. Sony! Because we'll keep putting out the same old shit because we have to keep our entertainment rights somehow. I mean, that's gonna get me rich for sure. Even though Sony said, and I quote, "We don't need your shitty acting nor your equally shitty green screen effects." That's not gonna keep me from sending it to them anyways. They just gotta see true genius. I actually got this idea from the first Ratchet and Clank game. I guess you can find financial inspiration in the most unlikely of places. It's time to rip the galaxy a new one. To me, that's one of the most iconic marketing tags for a video game icon. That tag, along with the colorful uniqueness of our characters, launched Ratchet and Clank from not just being a single game release on the PlayStation 2, but to an entire series that spans over multiple console generations. The PS2 games were so beloved that they actually got a widescreen release on the PlayStation 3. Not a remastering, a widescreen release. Talk about a series that defined not one, but two generations of PlayStation gamers, with more along the way. Back then, if you were going through your local video game shop and came across the PlayStation shelf, there's a high chance that you saw the beloved Lombax with his cute little robot buddy. Insomniac Games made the characters so relatable and full of life that these two have become a household name with most video game fans. Most people say lightning doesn't strike twice, but somehow it always does for Insomniac. And it's most likely because these guys refuse to put out something that they're not passionate about or is turning out to be mediocre. Following the development of Spyro the Dragon, Insomniac wanted to make a new IP. See, Spyro was developed by Insomniac but owned by Universal Interactive Studios, and while they enjoyed Spyro, they wanted to take a "this, we should just make something fun that will make a lot of money" approach to the new IP, and so they did. The team immediately began development on a game titled Girl with a Stick, and aimed for it to be a mashup of The Legend of Zelda and the Tomb Raider series. However, 6 months into the developmental process, Insomniac's CEO Ted Price canceled the game because the game was looking too generic and the team was losing interest. The team messed around with a few ideas, but one day Insomniac's chief creative officer Brian Hastings was like, Ooh, I have an idea, me, and suggested a game where you run and gun across multiple planets. This sparked new inspiration into the dev team, and 1 year later, we got two of the most memorable characters in video game history. And as with any new IP, the story is either ridiculously overcomplicated or grossly oversimplified. Which one does Ratchet and Clank fall into? Our story begins with a little defective robot named Clank escaping a warbot factory and crash landing on the planet of Val Din, the homeworld of our hero Ratchet. Ratchet heads to the crash site, finds, and repairs Clank. The robot shows Ratchet an infobot that explains our villain, Chairman Drek, is looking to build a new planet because his has become overpopulated and grossly overpolluted. Drek explains that he is on a mission to harvest the best parts of each planet to make the best planet in the galaxy. However, it is revealed that they are destroying the planets in the harvest process. Now this is where we know that this is a video game. I mean, come on. Sleazy businessmen that would destroy anything to get on top and be above every other competition? Pfft, come on. Ratchet and Clank go from planet to planet trying to find the galaxy's most famous superhero, Captain Quirk. Along the way, we discover though that Ratchet is more concerned with his own selfish goals, whereas Clank is more focused on saving the galaxy. As our heroes travel, they stop Drek's harvesting on several planets, which puts a big target on their back. Ratchet and Clank find Captain Quirk and meet up with him at his private headquarters on the planet of Umbaris. Upon arrival, Quirk tricks Clank and betrays our heroes as he struck a deal with Drek earlier to be the spokesman of his new planet, and this rips our two heroes apart emotionally. Ratchet becomes consumed with a lust for revenge on Quirk, while Clank is still focused on Drek. Ratchet and Clank fight their way through several planets and eventually find Quirk at a moon base. After a ferocious battle, Ratchet and Clank defeat Quirk and plan on going their own separate ways, but before they do, they discover that Drek is planning on destroying Val Din, Ratchet's homeworld, with a planet-killing weapon. This weapon has a very overcomplicated name, which took the naming division several months to come up with. F it, just call it the Deplanetizer. At this moment, Ratchet realizes that he must set aside his own selfish goals to save his home and the galaxy. Our heroes head to Val Din and confront Drek, who tells our heroes that it was actually him who polluted his own planet to profit from creating and selling the new one.
Ratchet and Clank defeat Drek and use the deplanetizer to destroy Drek's new planet. This sends pieces of the new planet hurling to Valdin, which causes Ratchet to fall, but Clank flies in to save him in the last second. However, Clank broke his arm in the process, and Ratchet says he'll be fine while leaving Clank. Clank, feeling distraught, begins to leave to go his own separate way, but Ratchet stops him and takes him home to repair him, solidifying their friendship.
Not a bad start for a new IP. Some of it is cliched, yes, but the game makes up for it with just how likable Ratchet and Clank are.
Throughout the adventure, you get to see that Ratchet is driven by his own personal aspirations, while Clank is focused on the mission, but is very naive. Most of the character growth in this game is from Ratchet, whereas Clank doesn't change that much. It's quite interesting looking back at where they started versus where they end, which is much more than I can say for the villains. Drek and Quirk aren't really anything to rave about. Quirk has more comedic moments and is full of personality, but Drek is just a baddie that you chase throughout the whole game to beat. Classic final boss stuff.
It feels like the devs wanted to make an alright story around the great gameplay experience versus a great story around a mediocre gameplay experience. That must be Sony's response. I can't wait to get paid! Well, you know what they say. If it doesn't work the first time, resubmit it as many times as you can until you bug them until they say yes. Let's talk about the gameplay while I do that.
See, Insomniac Games didn't just want to make another Spyro, so they decided to put it in the best genre ever. Action-adventure.
It's just so well defined.
Ratchet and Clank run and gun their way through tons and tons and tons of enemies while picking up more firearms to help them on their third-person adventure. The game boasts over 36 weapons and gadgets to collect throughout the game, and oh boy are there a lot! However, you only start with your wrench, and as the game progresses, you're required to rely more and more on your firearms. But if you just start with your wrench and need weapons later in the game, how do you get them?
F***ing capitalism!
Bolts is the currency in this game, and you have to break and destroy enemies to pick up the bolts. So there's a lot of, so you can buy these guns and gadgets. Once you pick up those guns, use your wrench for the melee attacks and these guns for the ranged attacks. Melee feels like a dream come true here. The wrench is the most satisfying weapon, and I use it most of the time if I'm being honest. The only issue that I have with it is that enemies can easily swipe you from behind while you're using the wrench, but this is where the guns come in.
Okay, I have my windows bolted. My door's barricaded, because what I'm about to say is going to cause an attack. You see, the guns in this game are kind of the worst part about it. Well, that was a fast mob.
Look, these guns are such a joy to collect, but using them is such a pain to use. The game has two ways to aim. You can either enter a first-person mode, or you can use an auto-aim system.
Both are shit.
You cannot run and aim at the same time if you stay in third person, so you have to rely on the crap auto system, which I swear only works when it feels like it. If you are like me and got tired of wasting ammo because the auto aim system wasn't working, then you have to stop and enter first person mode to aim. This is also terrible because it completely disrupts the pacing the game wants you to have. The first person aiming is just sluggish, and it will try and continuously pull you back to the center of the screen so you're fighting consistently just to hit your targets. Metroid Prime on the GameCube did this too, and it was just as sluggish there.
So we've covered half of the running and gunning, so let's talk about that running.
There are tons of planets to discover here, and each one of them is unique and fun. One thing that Insomniac Games does, though, is cut backtracking out of their level design. Woo! As you run and discover the planet's special gadget or infobot, the game opens up a new path that will take you right back to your ship, which saves you so much playtime, and it makes the flow of the game sublime. However, getting these infobots can be a bit challenging at times. See, one thing about Ratchet and Clank is that the original doesn't look that good. The color palette is super washed out, and this can lead to a lot of areas looking the same or similar. This, in conjunction with the piss-poor map interface, led to some really disorienting moments while playing. Luckily, the game is super clear most of the time when it comes to your progression in the main quest. See, throughout the game you can unlock, purchase, or simply find special upgrades to Clank or new gear upgrades for Ratchet. These open up so many cool ideas for level design, and Insomniac Games takes full advantage of them. While Insomniac didn't want to make another Spyro, they did bring over some of the platforming for it, but all the platforming in this game uniquely utilizes all of those gear upgrades that you receive for both Clank and Ratchet. Not all of it though is very linear, like you don't just go to a planet and pick up an item and then continue on and the rest of the level opens up. No, sometimes you need one of these upgrades to progress, and luckily the game will say, hey, we can't continue, you better move on and come back later. So once you find them, you get a sense of excitement as you rush back to explore new turf.
Overall, Ratchet and Clank is a great starting point for a new IP. The heroes are super memorable and the story is a very fun one, even though it is quite basic. You will get disoriented due to the poor presentation, and the gun combat is not the best, but even with these design flaws, I can't help but stop thinking about this game.
It was such a unique and memorable experience that I can't help but want to dive into the next game. Maybe that's why Ratchet and Clank are such a staple in the video game industry. But anyways, I'm gonna go check and see if Sony has gotten back to me and given me my money yet.